Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more videos like it on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I'd really appreciate it. Today I wanted to talk about Lonzo Ball because I've been feeling for a while now that he has not been given the proper credit for the improvements that he's made this year. This year he's averaging 12.4 points, 7 assists, and 6 rebounds, but the key difference here is that he has a 53% true shooting percentage. And even more importantly, he is shooting 38% from 3 on 6.5 attempts per game, which is a massive improvement from what he was doing earlier in his career, where his jump shot looked like the biggest flaw in his game. Now it's probably his biggest strength offensively outside of passing. As for some other overall shooting improvements, he is shooting 57% from the free throw line, which is still absolutely horrible, especially for a point guard, but it is a pretty big improvement from the 44% he was shooting the prior 2 seasons. Now, he's still taking almost no free throws a game, but at least he's making almost 60% of them now. If he could just get to 70% at some point, that would honestly just be fine, because at this rate, it's not looking like he's ever going to be a good free throw shooter. Also, he's made some marginal improvements at his percentage at the basket. I also, when I was looking at the stats, his criticism of his layups last year should not have been as high as it was, because he made a 10% jump in his percentage at the rim last year. Now he's shooting 62% at the basket, which is perfectly adequate for a point guard. Granted, once again, not a high percentage of attempts there. He's not really driving all that often. The three-point shot improvement has been amazing, and it's not just been standstill threes. He's only taken about 80% of his threes off of the catch. He's taking a lot of them off of the dribble, a lot of them with some step backs. Now, his percentage on the step backs are not amazing, but most people's step back percentage is not amazing. Like, I believe it was in the low 30s, but being able to have that shot as a bailout is more than really any kind of bailout option Lonzo had on offense. And all of this improvement shooting the ball is just a layer on top of the positive things that he's been showing already. Take the positives like his rebounding and his top 1% passing vision, which I don't think is given enough praise as is, and add some really good shooting on top of that, and that makes him a very good player. Not just not a bust, not exactly his exact peak that we thought he could be, but certainly not a bust anymore as people were proclaiming him. We weren't really wrong, however, I think it was wrong to dismiss Lonzo this early. I wasn't necessarily dismissing him, but I definitely wasn't exactly praising him either, because for the most part, we were saying once he has a jump shot and he shoots decently at the basket, he'll pretty much be there, because we never expected Lonzo to be a big-time scorer. That was never what people thought his skill set would be, other than Mike Korzemba, who said he'd be Steph Curry with a 40-inch vertical. But now that he has that jump shot, I really think Lonzo Ball has arrived of being one of the top-ish point guards in the league. We'll talk about that in a second. Now I wanted to talk about his fit with the Pelicans, because I think that's what's most interesting about Lonzo. I honestly think the New Orleans Pelicans are the best possible place for Lonzo to be, because his pairing with Zion, with Brandon Ingram making the improvements that he has, are pretty fantastic. Lonzo as a passer with a guy like Zion, having a top tier passer, like I'm talking one of the 5 best passers in the NBA, with Zion Williamson on your roster, is certainly going to work out pretty damn well, especially with that point guard and that passer being a pretty damn good three-point shooter on top of it. And then talking about Brandon Ingram, I've had my doubts about if Ingram can be the second best player on a championship team. I think looking at it now, he probably can if Zion is really as good as I think he can be. And with his jump shot being improved and him being able to shoot the three pretty damn well, and with Brandon Ingram's jump shot being massively improved just like Lonzo's, I think the Pelicans have something pretty special here. Now, the one thing that you could be concerned about with Alonzo is this might not hold up, especially because Earlier in the season, he was not shooting well from 3 or from anywhere, as he was the first 2 seasons of his career. And there was really just a hot streak that got his numbers up there. So the issue could be, even though those were what his season total numbers were, was he really actually playing that well? Was he consistently? Is he actually that good of a shooter, or did he just have a couple 20-game hot streak that really made him look better than he actually is? Well, the thing is, I always thought that Lonzo's shooting was given too much criticism given his attempts. Now, of course, 53% from 3 is not good. That's what he shot last year. But being that he's taken 5 attempts per game, I definitely think it was fair to say Lonzo was an okay three-point shooter. He wasn't one of the worst in the league by any standard. I think people just took his funky-looking form and the fact that he wasn't shooting amazing and just decided he was a bad shooter. I really can't stand when people talk about three-point percentage without the context of the attempts, because 5 threes a game makes 33% semi-acceptable at the very least. Definitely doesn't make him one of the worst shooters in the NBA. So I definitely think, especially with the free throw improvement, that he's definitely gotten better as a shooter, and on top of that, he's changed his form as well. So I do believe that this will hold up. I don't think it was just a hot streak. Starting off the season poorly wasn't amazing, but I think overall fit-wise, he's just perfect with Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, and I think he's gonna continue to excel as he is now. And with how valuable his intangibles are, his passing, his defense, his rebounding as a point guard, his passing and defense being A tier, I mean, I think even if Lonzo just becomes a 35% three-point shooter and he's never really an offensive player, he's still going to be a massive positive for the Pelicans. Like, he'd basically be like Draymond Green if he was a point guard, which is still a very valuable player. Also, side note, I'm tired of people acting like Draymond Green is not a good player just because he benefits from the Warrior system. The dude's one of the greatest defensive players of all time and a very good playmaker, but that's a side note from a previous video where I kept talking about Draymond Green. Anyways, as for the future of the Pelicans, is this core good enough to win a championship? I would say it's possible if Zion actually reaches that ceiling. I know that's not necessarily the topic of this video, but I think it is interesting looking at that Pelicans team. I mean, I think it's fair to say that this team would have been the 8th seed in the West if Zion was healthy all year. And Zion came into the league an absolute beast pretty much immediately. So I do think as long as injury is not an issue, I think the Pelicans could be a contending team by 2 seasons from now even. It's definitely possible, especially if Lonzo continues to make improvements, Brandon Ingram makes even more improvements, and Zion really starts to reach his ceiling. Now, where does Lonzo Ball rank among point guards? Well, the thumbnail says top 10 point guard. I don't actually think that, although I do think he is pretty close to that, and I know that's probably a controversial take. There are 11 point guards that I would consider better than Lonzo, and there are a few guys that I think are pretty much on the same tier. Those point guards that are better would be Steph, Russ, Kyrie, Damian Lillard, Kemba Walker, Ben Simmons, Trae Young, Ja Morant, De'Aaron Fox, D'Angelo Russell, Chris Paul, and Kyle Lowry. And after that, I think there are point guards on the same level, like Jamal Murray and Devontae Graham, but I have Lonzo as the 12th best of those guys, and I also think that it's pretty close with Lowry and D'Angelo Russell, and even Ja Morant and De'Aaron Fox aren't that far ahead, and if Lonzo continues to make improvements, I definitely think he could be a top 10 point guard in the NBA. His playmaking, his defense, and his shooting, all of those are really the most important things for a guard to have. The ability to shoot the ball and the ability to make some great passes and then not be a negative on defense. And Lonzo is a massive positive on defense. So we were wrong about Lonzo Ball. He is still going to be a very damn good player. He might not quite be Jason Kidd, but I also have been of the opinion that Jason Kidd is massively overrated, so I guess there is that. He'll basically be Jason Kidd if he wasn't completely handed the keys to the offense, which I honestly think is more of a positive than anything else. And overall, the Pelicans have something special in Zoe, especially with what they have surrounding him. I think next year the Pelicans are probably going to be one of the best offenses in the NBA. And with Zion, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, what's his name, Drew Holiday, Derek Favors is a good defender. Like, that's a very good defensive starting lineup as well. So I think they could be a top offense and defense even by next year. So yeah, that's why Lonzo Ball is very good. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.